Hi, this is Paula, and we're going to go through getting data from the web into Power BI. And to do that, we're going to go to the Alberta Government Open Data website, and I really want that nonprofits list. I know it exists there. I know if we type in the keyword nonprofit, we'll find it. And let's go to it. And there it is. So basically, this will give us all the lists of the nonprofits in Alberta. They have to register. Rather than downloading the file, we're actually going to take the copy of the link and we'll use that in Power BI. So I'm just looking for Power BI now. I had it up, but you can also type it in your search window and there is the desktop. When the intro screen comes up, we'll take Get Data, and there's lots of formats you can bring in, and we're going to look for web. So select the web one, and we'll fill in paste the copied link into that URL space, hit OK. It'll connect and come back with a screen. So it echoes back the information so we know it got there. And then we actually see the data and we'll have to select the little check mark in the box to say that we want to actually look at the data. Rather than load it straight into Power BI, because if you notice the column headers don't look right, we'll transform the data. And that brings in the Power Query editor. So here I bring it over, and it's great because you get this data profiling ability, and I am going to turn it off right now, and I'll turn it back on later and talk about it later. I'll just hide that refresh. It's sort of has a history from mine working again. And we're going to take a look at those top lines and get rid of that null row. So what we really want to do is go home, and we have the option to remove the top rows, and I'm just going to remove the one. Now that looks like the first row has real good names on it, we're actually going to go to transform and actually move them up to the header level. And what's great about Power Query is it's keeping all record of the steps that you've done, and you can highlight to the previous ones and see what the file actually looked like, which was absolutely wonderful. It's writing code as you go. It's writing in the M language. You don't need to know M. On the gear to the right of the source, you can actually check here that, yep, indeed, it really is reading from that URL. I'm just going to go to the last step and show you one more thing. The advanced editor is where you can actually see the code, and I would say that this is the ETL that's you get with Power BI, and it actually underlies Excel. So I'm going to turn back the data profiling information. So the data quality gives you an idea of completeness in the data per column. The column distribution gives you that bar chart, vertical bar chart idea of how what the values are. And the column profile will give you that distribution. I'm just going to go to an interesting column. So how about that postal code, right? We kind of want to learn a bit more than that. And it gives you more information. So you can actually see what are the top postal codes based on the first 1,000 rows. So just make sure that you are aware that it's not reading the entire file, but it's still giving you a lot of information, and I think useful information. So you don't have to necessarily go somewhere else for profiling. We're going to close and save so that it actually comes into our work area for Power BI and start to look at some visuals. So it is doing these query changes. I have some legacy stuff in there, so review recovered files that we'll get rid of. We're just waiting for it to apply the changes. Once it's done, we will see under the fields section the list of the headers or the attributes that were in that file. So I had old data. I might, I probably rebooted my computer. I can have the option to save whatever it stopped with. Just so you guys know that in the future, it might be useful. I'm going to start to look at the actual legal entity name. It happened to choose a table visual just by me selecting that one attribute. So it sort of figures out what's the best way to view it. So there's the table. You can move like you can with Excel, make the columns wider by getting the right cursor. I'm now going to create a slicer, and a slicer is going to filter it for me. And I dragged the city attribute into the field area. And you can see here that we get other things that may not be cities, so we know that we have a little bit of work to do with this data. I can also change the size of the visual just by grabbing the corner and dragging it down. And I'm placing a card visual in here just because I just want to get a list of I just want to get a number of how many legal entity names there are. By default, since it's a character, it likes to give a name in there, but I can use that drop down arrow to change it to number or account. So 61,000 nonprofits in Alberta is a lot. Maybe too many for me to work on because it's not all relevant to me. So at least I know I want Calgary, which is why I'm selecting Calgary in the filter. And we still have over 12,000 to consider just for Calgary. Still too much. So maybe we want to look at this a different way. If you click on the highlight the visual and hit delete or use that ellipsis, the 3 dots, I can actually select remove, get rid of it. And if you hover over the visualization pane, the little squares, it'll tell you what the visualizations are. And I've chosen the horizontal bar chart. And we'll drag the city into the axes and legal entity name into the value. And it knows that it's a value, so it by default selected account of that value. And we get a nice distribution of where most of the nonprofits are. And unfortunately, that third one does say blank, doesn't it? So that's an issue. However, I think I'm just going after Calgary, and we're going to type in Calgary here, and you can see some numbers. So most of them are there, a few outliers, not too much of a concern for me, especially when I'm just trying to narrow down the data that is relevant to me. Let's just check Edmonton since it has the most number to begin with. And same thing, probably most of them are Edmonton with a few outliers. And let's do Red Deer just because I can select many on the filter pane and you can see it respond right away. If I want to remove it, there's a little handy dandy eraser that I selected. So I just remember those things. When you pause on any part of the visual, you'll get the extra information tooltip. So this is the end. I hope you learned a lot and can do this by yourself. And this should be a lead into why we selected some data from Mini Datathon 1 Data for Good. Thanks. Bye.